Ready to start your journey? Whether it's your first workout or you are a seasoned athlete, Endurance for Everyone Coaching wants to work with you. Our coaching team has worked with athletes from beginners to USAT national qualifiers and are comprised of experienced runners, cyclists, and triathletes who have a passion for healthy living and have been where you are. We offer comprehensive coaching programs from weekly support to basic consultation, all designed to help you achieve your goals. If you want to take your performance to the next level, look no further than Endurance for Everyone Coaching. Go to www.teamE4E.com and click on the coaching link or send an email to teamE4E@enduranceforeveryone.com. And let's get started.
Welcome to this week's Endurance for Everyone podcast.
The following program is for entertainment purposes only. Though the hosts of this show are certified Ironman coaches, their attempts at long-course triathlons and endurance events should not be taken as an endorsement for you to do something stupid too. You should make your own bad decisions, then podcast about it. Now, let's start the show.
Hey, this is John Harris.
And this is Rob Bozovich.
And Endurance is for Everyone, and this is the Endurance for Everyone podcast. And we are back with episode 121 of the Endurance for Everyone podcast. I'm John down here in Tampa, and we have two people up there in Pennsylvania area today. Right, Rob?
Yes, we do. We got myself, esteemed co-host of the show, and super special, super amazing, fast, funny, and amazing person overall, Karen Clarke. Karen, welcome to the show.
Man, that's a build-up. Hey, guys.
Now you got something to live up to.
Man, yeah, that's a bit scary. Okay.
Yeah, okay. See, we just like shocked her into a submission right there. Okay, so before we want to talk all about the Pittsburgh Marathon that you both guys ran last Sunday. But start off, we want to give a plug on the last time Vinny Tortorich was on the show. We kind of teased out that he had a secret, and he has released a secret. I did post it on the Facebook group, and what he's doing is he's creating a documentary called Fat, which I love. I love that title. I don't know how you feel about it, but I hope he sticks with that. And he's crowdsourcing this. They're looking for, what was it, 150K, Rob, I think it was.
Yeah, I think he had told us and said on his show 100 he's going to do it regardless, because him and the other gentleman doing it are not taking money. 150 can get them where they really wanted to go with the interviews and such.
Right. So we are going to bring Vinny back on to do a kind of a longer talk about it and where it's going and what the plans are for it. But fatdocumentary.com #fatdoc will take you to the website, and so they have all these levels that you can donate to. I think 25 is you get a shout out, you get a credit on the film itself and a digital download, which is a pretty good deal for $25. But we want you guys to support it and help Vinny out in his endeavor in this. Don't you agree?
I agree completely.
Yeah. I know, Vinny is one of those, everybody takes him differently, but the underlying science behind of what he's doing and his, what do I want to say? His ideology, I guess, on nutrition and exercise is something I do agree with, and, personality otherwise, so,
if I might jump in for 1 second here, John, with that.
Yep.
And when I say to plug Vinny, and that being said, is Vinny, from the gentleman that you hear on the show to the gentleman in real life, if you go back to his really, really old episodes, you'd have to buy them, I think, at this point. But he had a couple of people on that he completely disagrees with 100%, like that every point, but he doesn't trash them. Like, he is very respectful when he has them on the show, and that's when he says he wants to do it like sort of an unbiased documentary. It's not going to be him sitting around. He's going to have on, like, he's going to invite, as he says, every top expert, whether they're paleo, whether they're vegan, whether they're carnivore, MD or whatever, he's going to invite them all on and let them all present the information and kind of just be a moderator, an arbitrator with this. So that being said, when I say if you were to contribute, you could actually write out to him as well. If you have ideas, I'm not saying he's going to take 100,000, 200,000 people's ideas and do exactly that, but if he hears from enough people that they want to see or hear something, I guarantee you he'll do it, because he's making this kind of like of the people for the people. He wants the unbiased information out there. And when he says that, I truly believe him, because he's had the same message now for 7, 8 years?
7 years at least. Yeah. So, yeah,
that's just my plug on it.
No, I agree with that. And I like his plan there that he wants to bring different people in, whether he agrees with them or not. I think that's the right way to do it. So many times you see these documentaries like Fork Over Knives, and they obviously have an agenda, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. You know it going in, but I like seeing both sides of it and presenting it both sides equally, whether you agree with it or not, so you make your own decisions, things like that. So, well, we'll see how it goes. I have faith that he'll put out a good product. So, right. So let's get into the Pittsburgh Marathon.
Crickets.
Well, you both finished, right?
Yes, I finished. How about you, Karen?
I finished. Floyd finished.
Yes.
So what I think we'll do here, guys, we talked a little bit pre-roll. We had said, whether we were going to go through one of our stories, then our other story, or go back and forth. And Karen said, hey, Rob, I'll kind of follow your lead. So I'm going to jump in and start with, when I say my day, I'm going to go through a thing, and then we're going to toss it to Karen. We'll go back and forth. John can interject and ask a lot of questions, or as he sees fit. So my day is slightly different. Everyone heard me say I live in central Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh is obviously southwestern Pennsylvania. It's 2.5 hours, good drive, no traffic. So what worked for us, my wife and I are back and forth what to do. Race was Sunday. We decided to drive down on Saturday, but so we packed the car Friday night, got up early because our little guy has been doing this, like, wake up at 4:35 and then kind of go back to sleep. So last couple of times we've traveled, we've just used that to our advantage. We've got him up, put him in the car, and he's fallen back asleep. Didn't work so well. He didn't sleep on the way down, but he was pleasant, so we had no complaints. As such, we Karen and I had talked previously about maybe trying to meet up, but it's like one of those like floating targets along, and I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen or whatever. Expo opened at 9. There was the kids marathon going on as well, which is a 1 mile race, and I can't say the exact route, but the kids run around and they run this mile, and then they end on the marathon course. Like, I don't know if it's the last quarter mile, half mile, how far, but they run right down the streets that are barricaded, just like the parents are going to be doing, or siblings or whatever the next day, across the same finish line. And so we went there because I had two nephews and a niece that were competing in it. We went there first, and we saw them, and then we my wife and I we hung out with them for a few minutes at the Finish Line Festival, because they had everything set up just like they would for the adults the next day in Point State Park, or the park that's right near there. I don't know if it's still Point State Park. And they had big booths, and they had events, and they had all kind of stuff. So we met up with the family, and we hung out with them, congratulate the little ones. And then my wife and I walked up to the Expo Center, to the David L. Lawrence Convention Center, which is about, if that's still the name of it, which is about a 3/4 to a mile walk. So we walked up there, and I was kind of updating Karen along the way, like, hey, here's what's happening. Here's what I think time-wise and where we're going to be. Eventually, I got up to, got into the building, and it was like, I told Karen, hey, I'm going to be like at least 20 to 40 minutes watching this. It was like an hour and a half later. So I'm like, oh, there's no way she is going to be around whatsoever. But I'm like, I'm not going to just not say anything. So I shot her a message and said, hey, we just got here. I think you're long since gone. She's like, see you in 10 minutes. I'm like, okay.
She was waiting for you, man.
She was hanging out somewhere. So, yeah, she must be stalking my GPS. So, Karen, what did you do up until that point? Because we ended up meeting up at about, maybe 11 noon? I can't recall. Somewhere in that time frame?
Yeah, I don't really know. I just kind of felt like, we so often say, and you see it posted a lot on Facebook that, we should get together and we should meet up and we'll be here. And I think we all get so busy and our routines are all so different that it's so easy just to not let it happen, So I figured, we got nothing else to be doing on a Saturday. So, yeah, we hung out at the expo for a while and then I went and got my sixth cup of coffee for the day and waited for Rob. So... Yeah, it was good. It actually worked out pretty well. I think we literally had just walked a little bit away from the convention center, got a cup of coffee, and we were just going to figure out what else to do for another half an hour when you texted and said you were virtually there. So, yeah, it worked out pretty well. We didn't spend that long at the expo. We just kind of wandered around a little bit, picked up race numbers, and, pretty much left.
So I did the expo, I should say, and I've been to a bunch of them. And Karen, I don't know how many races you've been to. I like Pittsburgh. Seems like there's a good mixture of stuff there. I'll get to that in a second. I just got to say, meeting Karen and her husband, Lloyd, it's one of those, when I say, I guess I could have stalked and looked at photos on the group. I really didn't. I'd called her and talked to her for a second and said, I'm behind the big purple bus and then in the indoors. And then, I'm playing my little guy. And then all of a sudden I hear Karen talking. I'm like, that's her. And I turn because in case you haven't picked it up, she has a very distinct voice, which is amazing to me. So the whole time Karen's talking, I'm just infatuated with her accent. 'Cause I absolutely love it, and it makes
you couldn't understand anything I was saying, right?
No, I could. And here's what's funny, and I'll go 2 or 3 things like the distractions and so forth. I'm not saying I'm hard of hearing. My wife says I need to go get checked, okay? But I explain it is if there's sound, let's just say 1 to 10, like different frequencies, certain things in the middle start to blend together. So when I get into a really big area, I can literally have somebody. My wife is one of them. She talks at a level or a frequency. I don't know how to explain it. Other than she can be talking, I can't hear her, but I can hear somebody like 40 yards away if they're just slightly louder or more baritone or just something different. I go out, hunting. I can hear a squirrel crack a stick like a quarter mile away, but my wife standing next to me, I can't hear a word she's saying. But I could hear you perfectly. I was infatuated with your accent, and I was hanging on. Like I'm just like amazed that you're like foreign to me. Like not meaning that in a bad way, but just like exotic. And I'm like, yes. But also kind of intimidating because I'm trying to pay attention to Karen and be polite and look her in the eyes. And her monster of a husband is standing here because, what did you say he is? You're not a small woman by stature. You're about my height, maybe a little less, 5'10", I'm assuming you're about.
I'm like 5'7", but when I stand next to Lloyd, I think I look like I'm about 4'9".
You did. When I saw that picture,
tall.
I was like, holy. Everybody's talking at once.
Yeah. He's 6'7".
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a big dude.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm short at 5'11", but he's literally super nice. But once again, accent makes, and I'm enthralled by that. But I literally got to do one of those turn and look up to him like the top of a redwood. I'm trying to look him in the eye and I can barely see underneath his chin. He's just so much taller than me. And you're both very lean and fit, and he's wearing a Heiner hat, which I know is a very hard race. And, he's talking about butterflies in a marathon. And I'm thinking dude, you're tougher. Both of you guys are tougher than I am. And, you're here saying about how he's saying he's nervous and you're going to pace him and such. And that's the first, we were kind of talking about that, which I don't know when you made that decision. Was it that day? Was it the morning or how did you make the decision that you were going to pace him and put, I guess, his needs and race before your own?
I guess it was kind of a long, it took me a couple of weeks to get to that point. I posted a little bit on the group page on Facebook. And so people kind of know some of the stuff I've been going through over the last few months. And it sounds like a really selfless thing to do, but honestly, it was something that was really positive for both of us because I mean, last year, I have a bit of history with the Pittsburgh Marathon like you do, Rob, and this would be my second year of running it. I ran it last year, and I qualified for Boston when I ran it last year. So I ran it in 3:48 and change, a little bit over 3:48. And I knew this year, just given where I was physically, and I didn't even start training for this thing until February. And I knew that I was not even going to get close to 3:48. And I was just going to be unhappy with whatever time I ran, quite honestly, because I knew it wasn't going to be close to what I had been able to do before. So my solution to that was to put it all on Lloyd. But it's up to him now to make this a really good day for me.
Totally
I'm
selfless.
like, okay, I'm there. Yeah, I'm there for you, Lloyd. This is like all about you.
It's all
But
on you,
honestly,
man.
yeah, and I guess I came to that conclusion a couple of weeks before when I did a 30K run, actually out in North Park, Rob. I don't know if you know where that is.
I do, yes.
Yeah, they do a 30K out there, which is 5-mile loops around a lake, like totally flat. And I tried to keep a pace that I would need to maintain to run, anything under 4 hours, which is what I would need to requalify for Boston, because I didn't actually get to go. I was in the middle of some radiation stuff. And there's just no way I could hold that pace. I was like dying at the end of a 30K. So it wasn't going to happen. It was pretty obvious. So then I kind of figured, I just need a different goal. I need something that'll just take me out of my own space, out of my own head, out of this kind of funky mood, and run it with him. And we'll talk about this as we get into the race, but it's the best decision I've made in a really long time. So yeah, it took a little while to get there. He was incredibly nervous. Trail running is really what we do, and road running honestly is an entirely different thing. So yeah, he was like butterflies in and out of the bathroom all day, like really, really getting worried about running it. So yeah, he was being serious when he said that.
So he has the same.
That's amazing.
I'm sorry. He has the same issues as I do pre-race with the stomach issues, huh?
Oh yeah.
That's why I don't eat anything before I race.
Yep, it's like a standing joke with us because I have other issues, but I don't have digestive issues, and he's just like totally anxious about that. Like, where will the porta-potties be? How will this work?
Exactly, scoping it out.
Yep.
Go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, and that's why it's amazing to me. Like I said, here she is previously talking about how she's qualified for Boston and thinking she's going to qualify for Boston on 9 weeks of training. And here he is, like I said, this just enormously a larger than life guy, and wearing the gear. Just be like somebody standing there wearing a Boston jacket, you know what I mean, and saying, oh, I don't know, it's gonna be a tough race, you know what I mean? If you're thinking it's gonna be tough, like, it makes little old me feel like, what am I even doing here? Like, I should just go home now. So but yeah, so I mean, we met up, and then had I any forethought, would have got a photo or a little recording. That said, I did get some recordings. I tried to do like New York, and I'm going to fast forward to the end, and it'll make sense. I called my wife after the race, and I could hear her, and I'm talking to her, but she could not hear me. What I found out was apparently I sweated through the microphone on the headset. So like the first several recordings are perfect, then they get a little bit garbled, then they get a little bit quieter, and then the last like 7 recordings are just dead silent. So that's why we don't have those, which is fine, because some of the things I'm saying were probably not the most PG thing, and we'll get there with what happened and what was going on.
To listen to, though, that's the fun stuff.
I still remember most of them, so I have no problem PGing them up and interjecting them. So my first recording, it would have been the kids race. And then I did do after the expo, and I said, hey, I just met with Karen and forgot to get anything here. So we walked around the expo. I really wasn't looking for much gear. Like, it's the first 1 or 2 you go to, it's like you look at every single thing and you talk to everyone, you spend hours there. And then you kind of like, for me at least, fall out of it where you're like, I don't want any of this stuff. But I went looking for a few specific things that I had not planned for, the best way to say it. And that was I was looking for UCAN bars, and I couldn't find any. And then I wanted to see what their official race gear was, because you hear me talk about the Marine Corps, because they use Brooks, and I just love the way the Brooks hats fit me. So when I saw official gear Brooks, I was so happy. And I was, from a distance, I saw the hats hanging there. I'm like, yay! And I literally go like jogging over there, and they're visors. And like nothing wrong with visors. Some people love them. I look really silly in a visor, but the hairline just doesn't do it justice. So
just
I got
in a visor.
What's that?
Just in a visor, you look silly.
Yeah, well, it amplifies or magnifies.
That's like before.
Say.
That's like before St. Anthony's. I looked at the guy next to me. I said, "Does this hat make me look fat?"
And he said, "Sure."
I said, "Yeah, yes,
it does." That's the reason, John. Take it off.
It was Lloyd's hat that made him. Lloyd's hat made him look so tall.
That's what it is. This hat made me look tall.
When you're 6'7", you don't need the Dr. Seuss top hat. I'm just saying. So, but so I looked for UCAN bars, couldn't find them. I looked for a hat, didn't get it. Then, so the last thing I was looking for, I was curious because my brother-in-law and his brother-in-law, Brad and Garmin, they have tried and used those race thoughts, those little magnets. So, I was like, I'm back and forth. And I saw a set that said Run Pit. I'm like, all right, that's cool. And I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and get that. I'm going to give it a try. Spoiler, nothing new on race day. Guess what Rob did? Something new on race day. That'll come back and be fun later on. So I bought those. We left the expo and actually called the one store, which had a booth there, Fleet Feet Pittsburgh. Because if you go on and look at vendors for UCAN bars, there's only 2 of them in the state of Pennsylvania, Fleet Feet Pittsburgh and somewhere, I don't know, western or eastern side of the state. I can't even, Doylestown maybe or something like that. So we literally drove there because they had one left and they set it aside for me. So I had to go pick that up.
Wow.
When you were talking about UCAN bars, I didn't realize you meant you actually needed them for the race. I got some of those. I could have just brought you some. I thought you were just meaning you wanted some to take home with you.
Just a munch on, just a midday snack. Yeah, no, I was planning on using it. So then we'll fast forward so that night, my night was we had the nieces and nephews had a birthday party. They're close together. The brother and sister are close together. So one, let's just say 5 days apart. So they always do the party in the middle. And then we watched a little bit of the Pens game. Would have liked some different results on that, but hey, we got another shot tonight. Shot tonight. So then I went to bed early. I got up early, and I was up at 4:45, maybe 10 to 5. Personally, what I did is I had 2 hard-boiled eggs. I had 2 scoops of UCAN in the little shaker jug. I had a cup of decaf first, and then I had a cup of regular coffee because I was trying to get that into me absolutely as late as possible while driving down. So I drank the UCAN, ate the UCAN bar on the way down. I parked at the base of the Duquesne Incline, and then it was about a 3/4 of a mile walk across the bridge through Point State Park, right there. Now, what worked out really well for me, I was able to use the restroom before I left the house. Coffee did a little bit of magic, and there was a porta-potty right there in the parking lot. Why, I don't know, but it wasn't the nicest, but it was nice to have. So I used that again. And then literally as I was walking into the corrals, they start Pittsburgh lines them all up. A is in the front, B, C, and maybe if there's D, but it's just one big long line. I came in on the south side of it, so I had to walk past all the corrals. And people were just kind of milling around there at that point because D corral wasn't starting for maybe another hour. It didn't close by the time I was walking in. So I was able to hit a porta potty one last time. And then I actually met up with Brandon Miller from the group. And the plan, because he was doing the half, and we were going to try to run together for a little bit. And then, and I'll get into what ended up happening, shaking out there. So, Karen, let's jump over to you. How was your after expo and race morning?
Well, I think what you're going to get here is Rob, the triathlete road runner version, and then Karen and Lloyd, the trail runner version. John, I think you probably know there's going to be a slight difference in approach here.
Oh, yeah.
Woke up and had some special brownies.
I wish. Beer, brownies, breakfast. No. I don't know, I had a couple of stale bagels, so literally I think Lloyd ate one of those. I don't really know what he ate. But he has one other thing in common with you, John. If he had his way, he would have been down there at 4 a.m. in the morning for a 7 a.m. start.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got to be there. I got to be there early. I can't have that added stress. I'm stressed enough. I can't add that running to the starting line stuff.
Well, this was my workaround this time. That's the other reason why we were down there on Saturday. So what I said to Lloyd was, let's go down. We'll drive to where we're going to park. We know how long it'll take. We know how long it'll take to walk to where the corrals are. And then we'll work backwards and we'll figure out what time we need to leave in the morning. So
and
that
then
was
add 30 minutes.
Yeah, and then add an hour or two. No.
Yeah, right.
So we have 2 dogs, and so, they have to go out for a walk and do their thing before we can leave. So we probably got up, I don't know what time. It was probably 5-ish. I'm not really sure. Took the dogs out, made some coffee. Literally, I think Lloyd did eat a stale bagel. I don't really know. I think I had a banana or something. It was just sitting there in the dish. So that was it. Yeah, and then we headed down. We actually parked by the arena, which is really easy for us. We're lucky. We're like 10 minutes from downtown and where we are, and there's really no traffic at that time of the morning. And to give the marathon organizers their dues, there were port-a-potties everywhere. Like, they did an awesome job. So there was like zero anxiety. We parked a bit like Rob, and they were like right there. And then we walked down the street and there were more. And it was like, it was really, really well set up.
Good.
So we had a pretty stress-free morning, other than the fact that Lloyd was still nervous and used the porta-potty 4 times. But other than that.
But I think that says something, right? Is that he's a racer. He's not new to this. He's not new to racing.
Oh,
and
no.
He still gets that nervous. And, I got that from a few people. It's like, how can you be nervous? You've done this. You've done like 50, 60 triathlons. How can you still be nervous? I know I get nervous every time. Now, road running, I don't get nervous.
It's funny because I think we were actually talking about it on Saturday because, we were having that exact discussion. It's like, where does this come from? And I think it's a couple of things for him. I think it's kind of the intimidation factor, especially with road races. Everyone looks like they're real runners, in quotes.
Yeah.
And you always feel like you're not looking like that because that's not how you're feeling on the inside.
Right.
And then I think the other part of it is he actually knew that parts of it were going to be kind of unpleasant. It was going to be tough.
Yeah, that's coming.
It's coming. So it's almost like you're gearing yourself up for that. Like, it's going to be hard. And I guess you've got that doubt about how you'll handle that when it happens.
Yeah, that is part of it. It's a big part of it. That the pain's coming. I think I'm okay with the pain. It's just that it's always that little bit of unknown. You never know what is out there, especially in a triathlon. In a road race, you kind of know, you know where it's going to happen. But triathlon, so many other things can come into it. Bad weather. You get slapped in the head by a swimmer. Anything, a flat tire, everything can play into that. But I think it's good for people to know that even people that are seasoned athletes still feel the same way, for the most part, before a race.
And for him, he knew he was going to be out on that course for somewhere between 4.5 and 5 hours. And I mean, it's a long time.
Well, my fastest marathon was 7 hours. So
you see, and so that the day before, and it's just like, oh my God, what am I doing?
Yeah, exactly. This is going to hurt so bad.
Yeah.
So, well, so the morning of, you kind of got there early enough that helped with the anxiety a little bit, I take it.
Yeah, like I said, it's always a compromise when you do things as a couple. So it's like, let's get there early enough so that he's happy and not so early that I'm just freezing my butt off waiting around in the corral.
Freezing? What's that?
I was cold, man. Like, there were people who didn't think it was that cold a day, but I had on, I actually remembered this time to take a long sleeve thing that I could just throw away, at the start line. Mm-hmm. And I wish I had kept that on because I was cold.
Oh, really? Well, what was it, like in the 50s, right?
No, it was down in the 40s, wasn't it, Rob, when it started?
I didn't see that. Possibly down in around the buildings. I saw 51 about the coldest while driving in the vehicle on there, and maybe it was a little colder down because of the rivers and the wind. It's a distinct possibility. I didn't see it because I didn't have the thermostat anywhere nearby while looking at down there, I should say.
Yeah,
So
I actually think it was the wind. Like, it wasn't windy as in, there's a gale blowing, but the corrals were kind of sheltered between the buildings. So I took off the long sleeve thing I had on. But then as soon as you got out of that sort of downtown area, there was like enough of a cold wind that I thought it was cold. But I'm figuring that I was in the minority on that one.
You were in the minority as far as, because I outweigh you. So my vote counts for 2 because I'm twice your size.
There you go.
So that's, 2-1 vote. Now I wouldn't say I was cold. Now that said I'll jump in with 2 or 3 foreshadowing things and then where things are going here with it. And that is, I thought the temperature could have been perfect. I thought it was a little bit sticky, a little bit humid. And that said, as I prepared, because once again, I'm trying to pack everything and I'm watching the forecast and it's just calling for, and I even sent John it, like Saturday was a perfectly beautiful day, perfect temperature, perfect humidity, no rain, anything. And then I fast forward 24 hours in the forecast and it's like 90% chance of rain the whole time. So to be honest, I would have rather have had the rain than had the humidity, because I knew that's what got me when I did Nashville. So I had almost every variation, and when I say I tried something new, I had t-shirt, shorts, I had tall socks, short socks, I had pants, I had a real thin long sleeve, I had a rain/wind coat. Like I had all gloves/mittens, 2 different hats, depending on what was going to be. And I had it all, actually, most of it packed in the car. And I figured, okay, looking at it, game time decision, temperature wise, I'm going shorts, short socks, t-shirt. And then what I ended up doing was actually just cut the garbage bag, to make like a poncho in case it was raining, to which when I'm leaving the car, the skies look cloudy. The phone says it's raining. It's not raining where I'm at. I still threw it on. On that 3/4 of a mile walk, I started getting sweaty, and the bag was starting to stick to me. So actually, as I was getting like towards the corral, I took it off. And by the time I was actually like probably even 45 minutes away from race time, I said, I don't even care if it rains. I can't have this bag. It was just like, you'd think kids in high school put them on to run and sweat and lose weight. I was already starting to perspire, just standing around, let alone when I had that bag on. I was dying. So like I said, I met up with Brandon Miller. We got into the corral and we got up and we were waiting for the race to start. I think the official race started at 7 or 7:05. And then we were crossing the start line probably about maybe 7:10. It was pretty quick, about 5 minutes after. So they tracked you. Well, you had your bib that tracked you officially, but there was also the app, the RaceJoy app, which I did sign up for it so people could track me. John, you were getting, notifications along the way, and I was getting cheers and stuff. Yeah, I was getting like cheers, but it would like kind of flash on my phone or my watch. But like I was doing something slightly different, and that was I had my fuel belt that I was wearing, and I had the Nathan brand, so it had one bottle diagonal in the back. I did pick up, that was one other thing I got at the expo, is I used to have a different one and it squirted much easier. This is the second Nathan belt I had, and you have to squeeze the bottle really hard to get anything to come out of it. So it was like nothing, drinking from a fire hydrant. What's that?
Rob, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
This is from someone who doesn't do a lot of road races. Why were you carrying water? Because there were like 8 stations every 1/4 of a mile.
Yep. And that'll come into play here as well.
Good question.
My training.
I just got up, found a couple of goos in the drawer, threw them in my pocket, and that was it.
Yeah. So I'm trying to be, when my diet's much cleaner, fat adapted. As such, when I'm going out on my training runs, anything under like 16 miles, I don't take water. I don't need to drink at all, because by the time I get thirsty, I'm home. So 99% of the time, I don't take anything. So the reason I wore the belt, the bottle was dry, but I had 2 extra scoops of UCAN. So I started the day with a plan of I was going to have 2, then, and I'll jump to it. At the water stop at mile 3, I put a couple cups of water in it just so it shook that up, and I consumed that between mile 6 and finished it before mile 13. So that way it was slowly getting into me, so I had consistent fuel through the whole race. That's the only reason that I carried it.
Okay.
And in addition, and I'll get to we'll talk about water stops in a minute here. Going back to, I did get I went to the stand and I bought a new nipple for the top of it, which is like a high flow, and it worked much better to drink from. I bought it, like I said, near the same place I bought those race thoughts, which, going back to the night before, they're magnets. How hard can magnets be, right? Well, they're not color coded. It's not like red, black, so you know which side goes to which. So, you try to place your bib and you try to place that magnet, and then you find out that you have the underneath magnet face the wrong way, and the thing goes skidding across the floor. So then you have to pick that thing up and you get it now you don't know which way it is. You try to reorient it and hope you got it right. You finally get one to clip. Then I go to put the second one on. It attaches itself to the first one. Like, it took me literally 10 minutes to get my race number onto the shirt, and then it was crooked. So it was another 5 minutes to get my race number straightened out. That comes into play.
They have this other really cool thing for race numbers, Rob. They're like little safety pins. Have you seen those?
I've tried those before.
They really work well.
And I've used them for 9 years. And spoiler alert, and I'll just jump to why. And I'm sorry if anyone from Race Thoughts or any company similar to that is listening. This was my first and last race that I will ever use them, because in my recordings I'm running and I had to use I kind of had to pee when I was in the corral, and there were no porta potties in the corral. So at about mile 3, I jumped into one, used it, got out of the corral. But when I picked my shirt up, the 2 magnets on the bottom attached themselves to the 2 magnets on the top. So now my shirt folded up. So as I went to pull that, I now became the proud owner, instead of 4 race thoughts, of 3 race thoughts, because one of them went gone. So then somewhere around mile 13, maybe 11 to 13, I don't know what happened, but I became the proud owner of 2 race thoughts because another one of them fell off. So I was, at $20 for the set of 4, I was already down $10 by halfway through the marathon because them stupid things falling off. And I'm worried the rest of the race, like, the number is actually shifting a little bit and starting to bunch up. But I'm like, no, I don't want to touch it because I don't want it to fall off. Because, now that, what am I going to do? Carry the number? Are they going to believe me? Like, these are the thoughts going through my head. Are they going to believe me that I ran this whole race? Well, I'm covered in sweat, and I guess there would be some photo evidence. I got my GPS. Like, these are what's going through my head, because I legitimately thought I was going to lose my bib. So, yeah, the fact of the matter is my shirt cost me $7. The race dots cost me $20. So I am no longer going to use a $20 product to try to save a $7 product. I will put the holes in the shirt and just call it a day, because I've never had safety pins fail me. So, sorry, a little bit of a rant there.
Yeah, I have to say that we'll never have Race Dots as a sponsor for sure. When you were telling me about that, my reaction was, oh, yeah, those suck. Because I tried it too, and the same thing happened. And everybody I know that have tried them have done it one time and never tried it again, because the same things happened.
Garmin, my brother-in-law's brother-in-law, fast runner, wears them. I don't want to say loves them, but if he didn't like them, I would say he wouldn't continue to use them. He uses them every single race. So I figured, okay. Secondarily, I 99% of the time wear my bib on my shorts, not on my shirt. But I actually thought this through the day before. I didn't want the bib on my shorts because I didn't want my legs, because they're big, to swish together and knock the things off and lose them. So that's why I put the bib on the shirt. It was a whole thing. I won't do it again. Next time, pins on the leg. That's where it's going. So, I think let's talk about the race. Brandon and I, we started together, and we're running. And the first couple miles, I guess I was pushing the pace, which is weird because the times in the past I ran with him, he's a little taller than me. I'm, like I said, 5'11". He's probably 6'1" or so, and he's always been a little faster than me. But I guess he hadn't trained completely as much. And so we were running the first couple miles together, probably about mile 2.5. He said, "Hey, Rob, go on ahead." And then so I did. And then that's good. It's funny. That's when I found the open porta zone. Literally, it's like I'm running past it, door opens. So I jumped right in, used it, jumped back out. At that point, he had passed me because we weren't that far apart. So I gave him a little pat as I ran by him, and then he said, "Have fun." And then I took off from there. To me, nothing much eventful between, when I say the first, I'm almost going to say half the marathon for me, other than losing those race thoughts. I was getting sweaty. And that, like I said, I thought it was temperature was great, and I personally thought it was a little bit humid. I started taking water, which, if you've heard me say, I don't drink water at all, like pretty much. Like through the day, like normally I'll drink probably a gallon of water a day, but when I'm working out, I'm fine. I really don't need it. But starting at mile 3, I started taking water, 1 or 2 cups at every water stop. And Karen had said it, they were every mile. Like, I don't want to make that proclamation and say it was every mile, but it was. Like, literally, it was like I'd see a mile marker, and then because I had my watch to where I was running for a mile or half mile, and then take a small walk break, run a half mile walk break. Like, literally, I was skipping part of the walk break because I could see the water stop at the mile or just past the mile markers, and I figured, okay, I'll walk through those and get the water. But yeah, I was taking a cup or two every every aid station past mile 3. The first 7 miles, kind of a course rundown. I can't give you all the street names. Karen might be able to. You run a little bit through downtown. You go over, and then you go past the Pirate Stadium. You then go past the Steeler Stadium. You then get on the West End Bridge, and then you go past the Rivers Casino, cross over. Then you run the I don't know what the road is, but it goes past Station Square, right past where I had parked my car, which is about mile 7.5, mile 8, at the past the incline, past Station Square, and then you get into the South Side, I believe it is. And at that point, that's like the half. When I say the half point, that's where the half and the full splits at about mile 11, because they turn left directly across the bridge. We do this little itty bitty out and back, which I'm assuming is what gets us that extra 1/10 of a mile, since it's, instead of 13.1 to 26.2, it gets us that little extra piece, I believe. And then we cross the same bridge they do, except they're in the left lanes of the bridge, concrete divider. We're on the right lanes of the bridge. Get to the end, they turn left and go into downtown. We turn right and go up the pit. I felt pretty good. At that point, I was dancing around. When I say dancing, I'd literally pass the 3:45 pace group, and then they would kind of pass me, and I'd pass them just based on uphill, downhill. I was feeling really good. If you look at my splits up until that time, my timing is, when I say like absolutely kind of better than it maybe it even should be, like my quote walk segments, I really wasn't walking. I was kind of just easing my pace back to about a 9-minute 10 pace, a 9-minute 10-second pace. My run segments were in the 7 and 8 range, kind of like build a little speed early on, planning to, walk up that hill at mile 11.5. That was kind of what I was doing at that point. The only telltale for me is by mile 7, my shirt was drenched. My shirt there wasn't a dry spot on it, and I was already starting to, I only had about 3 inches left of my shorts that weren't wet. So I knew I was sweating pretty heavy at that point. Karen, throw it to you, and then we'll talk first part of the race up through crossing the bridge.
I just have a pacing question there, because I was curious. Did you go out looking to pace yourself for a 3:45 finish, or did you go out at that pace thinking that would give you a bit of leeway to slow down in the second half and still be under 4? Were you specifically aiming for a 3:45 when you started out?
Yes to all of the above. The ultimate goal was I wanted to see 3:59.59 or less, but all of my training had been based around a 3:45 plan, so I knew I could keep those. I should be able to keep those paces. Now, that being said, the 7 even 8's a little quick. I needed I think an 8 or an 8:30, 8:35 average is where I needed to be in order for that to, and I'll confirm that here in a second. I'll go to my pace calculator, but that's what, I knew if an 8-minute mile would be like an amazing race. If I average that, a 9-minute mile average would still get me sub 4. Try to, I knew I couldn't drop a 6:30 mile and then a 10-minute mile to average them out. You know what I mean? I was trying to keep it within maybe 30 seconds, 8 to, 9 range. It was kind of the real plan the whole time.
And so you felt like that pace you were keeping at the beginning, that felt like a comfortable pace that you were thinking you could keep up for the whole race at that point?
Very comfortable, yes.
Okay. That's cool. I was just curious. So this will unfold more as you go through the rest of it, but I was just kind of interested in what your strategy was at the beginning.
Yep.
So I had I don't run a lot with Lloyd. I mean, up until this year, our paces have just been like way different. I mean, it's, he would say the same thing. I run faster than him. He's a big guy. He's come from more of a hiking background. So when he does trail runs, he tends to be a little bit more on the hiking end of those than the running end. And I tend to run as much as I can and only hike what I need to. So, we're pretty different in our approaches to things. So before the marathon, I had deliberately gone out on a 10-mile run with him. It was actually the week before Heine. So we went out, and I needed to get a feel for what was a comfortable pace for him, and I needed to get a sense in my own body of what it meant to try and run at that pace, because it was going to be markedly different, than what I normally would run. So we did that, and he would have loved to aim for like a 4.5-hour marathon. But I could tell from that 10-mile run we did that was really just not going to happen. He couldn't maintain that pace for 26 miles. So I figured that if I could keep him somewhere around 10.5-minute miles, if we could kind of be steady at that level, that, he would have a shot of like somewhere between 4.5, 4:45, and, that would be pretty cool. But a little bit like you're saying, Rob, like I could actually tell after the first couple of miles, I thought maybe he was still just warming up, but the humidity or whatever it was definitely affecting him at that point too. And so I kind of had this nagging feeling that a 10.5 pace was maybe a little fast and that we were going to have to kind of slow that down. And that's what naturally happened. So we kept that pace maybe for 4 or 5 miles, and then I could just tell it was kind of slowing. We were getting to 10:45s, and, by the time we got to that big hill up to Oakland, we were already starting to slow down at that point. So, he was doing okay. He kind of warmed up a little bit. His legs were already feeling a little bit heavy because running on roads and running on trails are just two entirely different things. So, he was kind of struggling with that different muscle feel that you get just from that constant repetitive, foot turnover, I guess, on a road. But he was doing pretty good. He was hanging in there. I had forgotten that. I don't know if you noticed this. I'm sure you probably did. But that bridge, as you come out of the south side where the two courses split that you were talking about, that bridge is pretty much all uphill. Like, most bridges, they go up to a peak and then they go down the other side. That bridge starts off lower. And then on the other side of the river, it's actually higher. So, and it's like over half a mile across that bridge.
Yeah, and a spoiler on that, just maybe a warning for people that do the half. That part of what got me, and I like to say, like we joke or say, like the sniper got me. Like whenever you start getting those leg cramps, okay, the sniper got me on the other side of that bridge when I did the half, because like you said, you go uphill, uphill, uphill. Then when you're doing the half, you turn left. You actually kind of like a hairpin turn, and you start coming. You actually run downhill after coming off of that bridge, but then have to do a hard right and go back uphill. And the sniper got me right there, because you're right. It's a half mile uphill, because on the south side you're almost, I don't want to say starting at water level, but when you get to the other side, the bridge is Pittsburgh is all, bridges, tunnels, and overpasses. When you get to the other side, there's, I don't know if it's train tracks, a couple of roadways that go under it. So that road is a good 60, maybe 80 feet higher, depending, I don't know how far it up, exactly it is. But yeah, because it actually goes into the middle of the hill and splits because there's stuff underneath of it. Yeah, it is. Yeah. That's leaving the south side until you hit, what is it, Carlow College at the top of that hill. It's uphill the entire time. Yes.
And that was my mistake, because, I was running well within my own pace. So I was keeping that same 10-minute 30 pace all the way along that bridge. And I'm wondering why Lloyd's kind of starting to huff and puff and turn a little bit pink. And then I'm thinking, oh, this is actually going uphill. We should be going a little bit slower than this. So he was actually pretty tired by the time we got to the bottom of the big hill that goes up into Oakland. But that was my fault, not his.
You're just pushing him too hard.
Yeah, again, it was just, we just hadn't run together a lot, so it was just trying to kind of figure out how to do that. And it was, he wasn't very happy.
So people in the past have heard me just say that hill, and that And I don't know, because I've looked at the map now. I don't know if it's from the bottom of that bridge to the top, like I said, at Carlo, or if it's just once you cross the bridge up. I know there's at least 200 feet of elevation gain, maybe more if you're measuring from the south and the south side of that bridge.
I mean, it's really not that bad. It's only when you get to that very, very top bit that it's a little bit steep.
Yeah, and that's exactly where in the recording that didn't come through, I was running, and actually I'm like, I had said I'm going to walk that hill, but I remembered how long it was, because it continues to go up. So I actually ran it, and I'm going to use two sets of air quotes here. I ran it, air quote, and then I relaxed, using air quotes, and I actually in my recording said that hill wasn't as bad as I had made it out in my head after years of just contemplating that. I was actually able, when I was running up that hill, slower pace as you're saying, but I had slowed then from like an 8-minute pace to like a 9:05 running up that hill. But then when it got to that really steep part, I did walk it. And I walked a little, like I was doing very, segmented, very scheduled walk breaks. And I actually took probably a 2 or 3 times as long on the walk break, knowing that we were then going to flatten out and go down through pit. So I took it and I walked that steepest part of the hill. But what I did is I watched my cumulative lap pace, because it was like 9 minutes. And I basically let that 9-minute bleed all the way up to an 11. And then I started running again. So that way I didn't go too bananas with it. But it worked out really well for me, because I figured I can sacrifice the pace, an overall pace there, on a half a mile in order to save something for later in the race, because I knew that that's the biggest hill to get up, but that's by far not the last hill in that course.
Yeah, it's not, but I think it's, in a way, it's one of the easier ones in that it's obviously a hill, so people were kind of slowing down or they were walking. I think just seeing that course through Lloyd's eyes, rather than through mine, because I live in Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh, so I live on the top of a hill. So anywhere I run, even like a 3-mile block that I do, has 300 feet of climbing. It's just how it is. I think that what really gets people about that course are those constant, like, gradual uphills. So they're not really a hill. You couldn't walk the whole thing. You'd be walking most of the course.
Right.
But they're enough so that if you don't slow down just a little bit, or you're not watching your heart rate, or you're not thinking about your breathing, it could pretty much exhaust you by the time before you even got to climbing up the big hill. If you know what I mean, it's deceiving, I guess is what I'm saying.
Definitely. Yes. So, and I guess not. I mean, that being said, you can describe the course more eloquently than I can. Like you said, it's all up and it's all down. You're always doing some sort of hill. There is nothing completely flat there. And the hills, like I said, that they actually weren't getting to me. When I say it was the humidity, by the time I hit going through pit, every article of clothing was drenched. I had wrung my hat out several times.
Lloyd was exactly like that. He was wringing his shirt out. Yeah. He was.
I would have, but I was down to 2 race thoughts, and I didn't want to lose my pip, so I wasn't going to go that far. So semi spoilers, if you will. Now, you had said it earlier, kind of very well, and that's you thought there was like just something off. I had my UCAN. I was taking it. Everything seemed fine. I seemed in a good mental state. I felt okay. I was getting a little niggle here and there, like around going through the south side, like my Achilles started hurting, like almost like a little bit of a cramp and then go away. You know what I mean? And then going up, I had a little, like, not necessarily a side stitch, just a little something, and go away. It was just this little floating, just moving around. And then I don't know, I'd have to go look at the actual paces. I don't know if it was somewhere between mile 18, 16, 18. When I say I started to noticeably slow up for me, like I said, I was still taking, when I say more water than I've ever drank, 1 cup early on, 2 cups probably starting at mile 6, every single water stop. So then I started thinking, well, okay, and I had done this, I'm using air quotes, just in case. I did pack shot block or cliff block or whatever it is, like the little gummy blocks. I packed the little beans, which I never use. that said, is like I've used them in marathons in the past, years and years ago, before trying to be a fat adapted athlete, and I took them just in case. And now this didn't feel like, when the wheels have come off, and I'll go through my progression of marathons. My first one, I was dead up in Erie. My second one, I was feeling better. I had knee problems. Pittsburgh, my third marathon, 4:01:41, like, rock star, feeling awesome. And then they went back up. My next marathon was New York, and I sweated a lot. It was hillier than I had anticipated. It was like a 4:30, I think. Then I did the next year. I did Nashville, humid, way more humid than it was here. I was drenched through by mile 3. By mile 16, 17 of Nashville, like, I was done. I called my wife and said, "Hey, I'm fine. I'm just literally walking this in." So I was basically walking 5 minutes, running a minute at that point in that race. And then I trained really hard for Marine Corps, blew up in that race as well. I don't know if it was humidity, heat. I don't know what got me down there. And it was like 5.5 hours. So if you looked at my times, came way down and then went way up. But I can very distinctly remember what I felt like physically, just wanting to give up. And it wasn't quite like that. Just things weren't right. I just couldn't put a pin on it. Like, it just, nothing felt perfect. Like, those first 3 miles, those first 5-6 miles, I was cruising. Everything just felt perfect. But once again, I was perspiring a lot. So I kind of started to think, maybe the UCAN isn't working for me. Maybe I need to take like some of the sugary stuff, right? So I took one of the Cliff blocks, like I said, around, I don't know if it was 16 or 18 or whatever. And it had no effect. It did not change. Like, I didn't, people say, well, I took it in and I suddenly had a boost. I didn't have a boost. I didn't feel anything. Like, I wasn't feeling bad. Like, I didn't want to jump off a bridge. Just something wasn't right. And I'd have to say, if nothing else, I might have been dehydrated at that point, because the amount of water I took in, I hadn't gone to the bathroom since mile 3. I had drenched through my clothes. But, I physically don't think I could have drank any more water without making myself sick from doing that. And that's when my pace, when I say the wheels started to come off, when my pace had started to slow, it's in those miles that then I saw the 3:45 pace group fade away. I saw the 3:50 pace group fade away. I saw the 3:55 pace group fade away. And it was probably around mile 23, 20 or so that I saw the 4-hour pace group fading past me. And that was hard for me to see it, because that was like, 'cause I knew I had started before them. And that was kind of like, I don't want to say nearing the end of it for me. That's whenever the bad monkey brain started setting in, and bad thoughts started creeping in. That's why I'm glad I don't have those recordings right now, because they probably weren't the nicest.
Where were you on the course when the 4-hour pace group went past you?
Down, like I said, I want to say mile 23 or so. I was down.
It was near the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
down
I was
maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I was tracking, and I remember watching. I was getting updates every mile, and I could see it like after about mile 17, I started seeing them slow up a little bit every mile.
Yeah.
So I was saying, oh, okay, something's going on here. And then it was about mile 23 that I kind of noticed that. I think that's the point that, I don't know if you saw Race Joy, but it gives you an estimated arrival. And it had you under 4 the whole time until about mile 23. And then it went to like 4 hours and some seconds and 4:01. So I knew something was happening near the end. But
I mean, and like I say, we haven't talked, Rob, but, I sent you that text, and I think that no matter how nice people are about, wow, you did great, and, oh, that's awesome, and I wish I could run, close to 4 hours, it sucks to miss a goal, and it sucks to see it slowly slipping away. But I think the other side of that, though, is you can be really kind of pissed off that you missed your goal, but you can't really be that hard on yourself if you know that you were giving it everything you had and you didn't have anything else. It's like this catch-22. It's like, I couldn't have done anything else. Yeah.
How's about we'll do the end part here slightly different. How's about you then? Let's wrap up your race. I kind of set up to mile 23. Spoiler on where it's going, by the way. But then why don't you tell us how you and Lloyd finished up, and then I'll give you the end of my race and my post race thoughts and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, we got to kind of where we were heading up to Oakland. So was that at mile, that was near let's just say it was kind of a half marathon point. Once you get up that really big hill we've been talking about, that's pretty much at 13 miles, right, Rob, I think?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So we got up to there. I usually, when I'm on trails, because you can have, 2, 3, 4 hours between aid stations, I usually carry a water bottle with me. So I didn't really realize how much I'd gotten to know. I like a water bottle rather than a bladder because I can make sure I'm drinking. I can see what I've got left. I can see how much I've drank. I didn't have that. So I drank way too much water. So I usually never stop in a race, but I really needed to pee. So we got up to Oakland. I was like, I've just got to stop. I just can't do this. So I said to Lloyd, you just carry on. Because at this point, he was probably running maybe pretty close to 11-minute miles, I guess. So I said to him, you carry on. I'm just going to go use the porta-potty. I'll catch you up. So I get to the porta-potty like you. I walked right in, did what I needed to do, got out. Looked like you can see way along. It's a pretty straight road there. And I'm looking along this road and I cannot see him. And like we said, he's a tall guy, pretty distinctive. Looking down there, where the hang is he? So I took off down there. I ran an 8-minute mile through Oakland because I just wanted to catch up to him. I could not catch him. So he had some friends who were going to be, they have a house in Shadyside. So they were going to be on the front porch, and he almost had gotten to them by the time I caught up to him. I think he was so excited to see them. So we saw them and said hi and had hugs and, had a drink and stuff. They had some beer there, which I had and he didn't. And then we went a little bit past there and he said, I just need to walk for a minute. So he stopped and I looked at him and he was gasping for air. He was pink. He was I asked him what his heart rate was. It was 170.
Oh, wow.
That's a touch high.
Yeah. So I leave him for a couple of minutes and he just totally lost this nice 10 and a half, 11-minute pace that we had been running. And I honestly think that was the worst thing that he did because I don't think he recovered from that for the whole rest of the race. So then we walked pretty much from Shadyside for maybe about half a mile because I said to him, until your heart rate's down below about 135, we're walking. We're just going to walk till it gets there. And we walked for quite a way before it got down there. But then what happened, and John, you've talked about this a little bit with your heart rate. Once his gets up, it's really hard to keep it low.
Yeah, in the middle of a race, I can't keep it. I can't get it back down again. I think what happened to him, though, is that he did not have a beer.
I think that might have been it.
So next time.
There was another opportunity. Was that around mile 23, Rob? I was going
to say that, right around there. And years ago when I recapped that race, I was going down that hill, and it was hot. And I swear they were college students. But there's I think it's now a little brew house or a little brew pub or something was there, and somebody was giving them away. I didn't take one this time, but there was definitely opportunity. Did you see somewhere too? I would say one of the colleges. There was some girls on the right giving out Jello shots.
Yeah. It's turned into the whole beer thing. Has turned into every time I've done it because I've done the half marathon a few times too. That's just turned into the thing they do down there now. So. Yeah, I think if he'd stopped for the beer, his heart rate would have gone down, and he would have had beer. So, yeah.
So we need to look at that race strategy next time.
I think so. So, yeah, and then it was he would run for a little ways and his heart rate would go back up. And so it was just really hard to get back into a rhythm that he could hold after that. So that's when we started doing a lot more run, walk kind of stuff. Just to kind of, keep things even as best we could. And then I know from trail runs, even when I've been really exhausted, I always feel better if I get to the end and I feel like I'm finishing it at least as strong as I can. So what I didn't want to do was for him to end up walking in the last 3 miles. So I was just really determined that wasn't going to happen. So I tried to kind of pace out that sort of 13 through to 23 miles. So I knew he would have something left for those last 3 miles.
Now, if I could interrupt and ask you just one thing, because you said you were doing a run walk, and you said you didn't want him walking in the last 3. Do you mean no walking in the final 3, or just not so tired that he had to walk the entire 3?
That's exactly what I mean. I didn't want him to feel like he literally had to walk 3 miles to finish. Yeah.
Got it.
And he just wasn't getting the run walk strategy of like run 2 minutes, walk 30 seconds or whatever I tried to put together, just wasn't doing it for him. Like he was too tired. He couldn't get his head around that. So I was just looking ahead and saying, we'll run to those traffic lights, and then we'll walk to the next set of lights, and we'll run to that corner and we'll walk to here. So we did it. It wasn't as methodical, but we still had like walk run breaks from there on.
That's a strategy I've used during races as well, because sometimes I can just get tired of the, I'm a data guy. I love that run walk stuff, but at some point, sometimes you're just going to say, you know what, I'm just going to run to that light post.
Yeah.
And then I'll walk to the next one. Yeah.
And it was more natural for him to do that too, John, because, again, you've run on trails, and that's how trails tend to be. You jog what you can. Yeah, or you'll hit a hill, and so you naturally, it's all really based on what's in front of you. It's not based on what your watch is telling you.
Exactly right. Yeah, I don't even put my run walk on during a trail run because of that. I know I'm not going to follow it, because if I hit even the climbs that we have in Florida, our climbs, I'm using bunny quotes now too. But I know I'm going to walk up that. So, and it never hits, it's always going to hit on a run, run portion. So yeah. I don't even pay attention to it after a while. And then I'm going to run downhill all the time, and I'm going to run on flats. Kind of the same thing happened in Runner's World when I was up in that area in Bethlehem last year, is that I just started, when I hit the hills, I just started running down the hills and running the flats. And then whenever I hit a climb, I just walked up the hill.
Yep. And
it ended up being my best time. I beat it by like 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, my personal best. So it just worked out better that way sometimes.
Yeah.
It's all about taking what the day gives you,
So how did you guys finish up? What was the time? Go there, and then I'll jump back in with my conclusion.
So a little bit like you seeing pacer groups go by, I didn't actually ever say to Lloyd, we're not going to meet a 4.5 hour goal. I just let him figure that out for himself. So he figured out after about 6 miles or so, he said to me, yeah, we're not going to do 4.5. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think so. But I think you could do 4:45. I think that we should try and keep on that pace and, try and get to 4:45. And then, like I say, he got really tired around that 15, 16 mile mark. And he's like, I'm not going to finish under 5 hours now. And I just looked at it and I'm like, well, I'm not going to be out here for 5 hours. So we are not taking 5 hours. I've never been on a course that long. Like, you've still got a shot at 4:45 at this point. If you can just keep up a steady, even a 12-minute pace is fine. Like, you're not going as slow as you think you are. He thought he was literally crawling, and he wasn't. He was actually doing okay. So I could kind of tell it was probably going to be closer to 4:50, but again, I didn't tell him that. So then we got to the 23-mile mark, and I said to him then, it was down, I don't remember where that really big downhill to the strip is, Rob. Is that a little bit before 23 miles? I don't even remember now. But we made
on my map, because I wanted to go over a couple of data points. Depending on how you exactly measure that big downhill, it starts at mile 22.7 and ends at about 24.
That makes sense, because we actually made up some time coming down there. So we got down there, and I did actually manage to see my watch when it gave me the mile, the time that we'd done for that mile, and that was around 11 minutes. So we made up some time coming down there. And so I said to Lloyd then, if we can just do this run to the next traffic lights, walk to the next one, and then when we get to the turn where the big long finishing chute is, like I said to him, you're not walking down there. We're definitely running that. So if we can do run walk to there. And I was biting my time, because I thought if I tell him to start running with no more walk breaks too soon, it just won't happen. He'll be too tired. So I was trying to figure out how hard can I push here to get him to really run the end and not just, be stupid about it. So pretty much we ran walk from 23 to about 25 and a half, and then pretty much ran in the last mile. But he was running pretty slow then. We were probably doing about 12.5-minute miles, I think. I haven't really looked. So we ended up finishing. So then I could see we were ticking over, and I said to Lloyd, if you run, we're going to have to pick the pace up. If you run down this whole finisher chute, you can get in under 4 hours 50. And I think we finished in like 4:48 and change, like just under 4:49. So yeah, he was really happy. And what was kind of cool is the crowd down there, people could obviously tell that I was running for him, and he was the one that was putting in like 150% effort. And then when people see someone pick up the pace like that, they were just like cheering. And he had his name bib, and it was really awesome. Yeah,
it's always amazing when the crowd jumps in on that, because they can tell. You're right. They can tell when someone's really, we saw it at St. A's too. You coming down that chute, and you can tell the people that are hurting. And when they hit that chute and they just start running, the crowd goes crazy.
They really did. It was really awesome. Yeah, it was exactly what he needed, because then when he could see that because then I said to him, well, you can't slow down now, because now they're expecting you to keep doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
So we had a really, really good finish, and he hung in there, man. It was tough. And same thing, what would he have liked to have finished in less time than that? Absolutely. But he didn't leave anything out there. He put everything he had into it. So he's just so happy. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I do have a follow up, but I'll let Rob go and finish. But I do want to ask you something after that. And
I finished it.
Okay.
I mean,
write it down, John, so you don't forget.
Oh,
I had to be careful. I had to be careful what I said, but I just felt awesome when I finished it, because I was running so within myself. And I think what struck me about it is I think that's the pace I should be running my long, slow runs at, and I don't. I actually run them faster than that. That's what kind of personally about it. Yeah, because at that pace, I could run for hours and hours. And that's really what I should be doing when I'm doing those long, slow runs. So that was my personal takeaway from it as well.
You found your ultra running pace.
Yeah. I think, I don't know whether you've said this before or not, John, but you kind of convince yourself that you can only run so fast or so slow. It's like you think you've got little window, but it's not true.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, people get this thought in their head that they have to run this, or they can't run slower than this, they can't run faster than this, but you can do probably either.
Absolutely.
And if you do all your training in zone 2 and things like that, you could probably go faster. And that's the hard part, even with a couple of just pure runners that I've coached, is that it's convincing them of that.
Yep.
It's like, yes, I know we're only training at, and my clients are a little slower, so that we're training you at 13-minute miles, but I'm telling you on race day, you're going to go faster than that.
Yep.
And so
you do, and I think the point that you're making there too is you do have to train for it, because my legs were getting, my knees are actually pretty sore today, and I think it's just because my pace was different, my stride length was different, and that's not really how I run. So
Right. Yeah. And that's going to happen. Plus, you didn't train, like you said, you had other issues going on too. So your training, length wasn't there either.
Yeah.
So exactly. there was something there. You have a good base, but you're still, what was it, like 8 weeks, right? And even within that 8 weeks, you had a couple weeks you had to stop, right?
Yeah.
Am I remembering? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was actually talking to my running coach about it, and I think what's been really hard for me is cardiovascularly, I don't actually feel like I've lost a lot. When I got this diagnosis back in September, I was 2 weeks away from a 100-mile race. So I was in peak condition at that point. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I've still got that, but what I have to remember is my tendons and my muscles and everything else, they just haven't had that build up. So that's the weak link for me right now.
Yeah, right. The mind is willing, the body is weaker.
Exactly.
It'll come back though.
Yeah. We'll see. That's another story. That's a story for another day.
Story for another day.
Yep.
So bring us home, Rob.
Because what I want to know, Rob, is I want to know when you knew you were only frickin' 2 minutes away, and why you couldn't just boot it down that last couple of miles and make up that time. That's what I want to know.
So here's where we are.
And you need to have a really good reason.
Knuckles. Well, I'm going to crack the knuckles. I'm going to push the glasses up. And I'm going to go, data, John, here's your data. And then here's the hard part about all of it. And then
I'm telling you, Rob, it better be really good.
It's not. So you were asking me when I saw the pace group, and I said it was probably about mile 23. I can tell you it was about a quarter mile, half a mile before that, maybe even so before that big long downhill. I kind of like got I don't want to sound derogatory. It was in that whenever you come out of there's like that kind of not so good neighborhood. Then there's that really bad neighborhood where like 3/4 of the houses are falling down, and that's when they passed
all the little kids just about to run out the middle of the road. Yes.
That was where I saw them go, but also that's where, and I'm going to jump off but come back here. Right now I'm looking at elevation, pace, heart rate, everything. If you look at statistically, how did I run this race? It's funny. I was obviously a little faster early on, and then you can see more of my pace dipping on those walk breaks, like the blue chart on Garmin, like it's pretty consistent. Then there's a big white gap, because that's where my walk breaks are. My heart rate though was much higher earlier on. Like right now I'm looking at mile 4. My heart rate was 178 at mile 4, but nearing the end, during that place where those people passed me, my heart rate was at 159. So heart rate's under control, walking, running, everything. As I said, when I say I'm giving everything I got, but it's just one of those, you starting to feel sluggish. I said, okay, maybe I needed to take that thing. I had taken it miles before, so it should be kicked in. Nothing was changing, and I just see them fading. I knew that I was up against some restriction that I couldn't overcome. Statistically, not necessarily statistically speaking, but percentages, when you look at my heart rate, like my time in zones, time in zone 5, 4%, time in zone 4, 5%, time in zone 3, 19%, time in zone 2, 67%. I ran almost 70% of that race in zone 2. So I think I did really good. Like it wasn't like I was blowing. When I've hit the wall, my heart rate is exactly – when I say it's the opposite of what I'm saying here. When I'm up against it and dying and bonking, my heart rate hits 180 and it won't come down. My heart rate was recovering. I just couldn't go. I don't know what it was. So I saw that pace group fading. I cried a little inside, and then I said, okay, let's man up. We're not quitting. We're going to finish this. Now I have to rewind in the race. When I said I used that port-a-potty at mile 3, instinctively, as soon as I got into the port-a-potty, I stopped my watch. And then I went, oh no, and I restarted my watch. And then when I got out of the porta-potty, I instinctively started my watch because I'm always on my training run, stop it when you go in, just so I keep my moving. So I had stopped it. I caught it fairly quickly, although it was, I don't know if it was 1/10 of a mile, 2/10 of a mile, whatever. That said, the bigger part of it was I didn't know time-wise how that was, how if it was 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. So I really didn't know when you said hey, when you're getting so close to it, couldn't you just boot it down the line? Okay. I'm not saying that as a criticism, by the way. I'm just kind of
yeah. Well, let me,
and I'm going through it. So go ahead.
I'm sorry. Let me tell you, Rob, that I fought. Every instinct in my gut was telling me to call you and tell you how close you were. Yeah. Because I was watching it and I said, "Oh my God, he's only going to miss this by a minute."
Yeah.
And my hand was hovering over my phone. I said,
"Yeah." Because here's my other question, Rob. If the 4-hour pace group passed you at 23 miles, you must have been, when you were at mile say 20, you must have known your margin was getting pretty small, right? Were you aware of it at that point?
A little, but I kept at that point. I had not turned around and looked behind me until at least mile 20, 21, 22, looking for those pace groups. Like you're saying, I'm now looking, and I could not see them. I knew they were fading away. I ran down the hill and had a pretty good pace, obviously downhill. I ran as far as I could on that flat. And I was trying, basically when I knew I was within 2 miles from the finish, I said, like, I'm not walking. And I had to take one last little walk break. I had to. I literally couldn't go on anymore. And it was just past the strip, that last warehouse on the left. Anyone who's done that, I was walking, and literally, like, we start playing that game. I'm going to walk to that, and then I'm running it in. Okay. And I'm running it in, running down, you're running, the buildings are getting taller, you have that long stretch, and then you have that right hand turn. The first time I did this race, I didn't realize there was that right hand turn, so like I sprinted, and then I was dead for that last 200 yards. I knew that was coming, to the point though I was when I said I was giving it all I had, I was cramping in my diaphragm to the point that I was anyway. So I was talking, I couldn't even talk at that point, and that's why, like, I had a recording and I knew how ridiculous I sounded, and then thank goodness the mic didn't pick it up. I turned and made that final right. I saw my wife and I saw my son. The finish line is only 150 yards away. I slowed up for a second to say hi through not gasp, because I wasn't winded, but I was cramping so hard in my center section that at that point I couldn't, like, almost talk, and I was physically, like, I cried a little bit. I'm just gonna be honest. Okay. So then I ran it into the finish. And now, that being said, I'm not exaggerating. Like, I thought, okay, I'm not making it out as bad as I am. I got through the finishing chute. At that point, I realistically thought I was at like a 403, 404. I don't know why.
Because that's what you told me. Yeah.
That's what I told, like, everyone. So then I literally crossed through after the finish line, before you get your medal, I leaned on a fence just for a second. But apparently it was long enough that a paramedic came over and said, "Do you need to go to the medical tent?" So that's the first time that's ever happened to me. So I knew at that point, maybe this is a little more serious. I'm like, no, I'm just, cramping. I'm fine. And I got the heck out of there because I didn't want to go to the medical tent. I got my medal. I got my photos. And it wasn't until 4 hours later that, like, I actually went, and somebody had said something. So I went and checked my results online. My finish time in 2013, 4:01:47. My finish time in 2018, 4:01:41. Finish time in 2018, 4:01:57. I was 16 seconds slower this time than the last time I did this race. So you're right. It's 2 minutes. Is there a place on the course where I could have gotten 2 minutes faster? If I didn't hit that porta-john, if I didn't walk through 2 or 3 of those water stops. There's so many variables that I could have done better, but it's one of those, like, I was feeling good almost until I wasn't, but I was being as proactive as I could. I was taking water. I had my fuel. I tried everything. I can't really think of anything else I could have done differently it isn't like there was one really big blemish. It's just, I have to say, I believe I must have been a little dehydrated, and there was just nothing I could do at that point, because it was just it wasn't all of a sudden I was dehydrated. It was a slow progression over 8 miles, and I was consuming as much water as I could stomach, when going through those aid stations as well. So,
and hindsight's 2020, and that's why we have to be careful when we're kind of giving ourselves a hard time about these things, because, what you see afterwards and what you're actually experiencing at the time are just two entirely different things. I haven't run a lot of road marathons, and I only ever really I went out have you guys heard of the Leadville 100? This is a little bit of a side issue, but the Leadville 100 is a pretty iconic 100-mile race out in Colorado, and it's known because the whole race is above 10,000 feet. Yeah. And I stupidly decided that would make a good first 100-mile race, right? Go big or go home.
Because why not, right? Yeah.
Why not? And it's a lottery, and I entered and I got in. So, the gods were on my side. That meant I should go do it. But I think that what I realized doing that is I could say that it was the altitude that was the issue. I actually missed a cutoff at the 50-mile mark, And I was just stunned. Like, I had come up with lots of things that could happen, but not that. I'd gone out to run 100 miles and I couldn't even run more than 50. And at the time, I'm like, oh, it was the altitude, and we can say with you maybe, as an example with Pittsburgh, Rob, it was humid. And that's all true. But the truth is I could have dealt with the altitude had my fitness been somewhere else. Like to run the pace I wanted to run, I needed to be fitter to run that at 10,000 feet than I was to run that, at sea level. And for you to run at the pace that you were running in training when it was winter and so much cooler, and then to go out on the day and try and do that even when it's 5 or 10 degrees warmer, it's just harder. There's nothing you can really do about that. You can drink and you can try and do all of those things, but you're kind of up against something, that is it's just going to slow you down. There's just nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down
ultimately. Sorry, John. I was going to say something that it's hard. Got a lag?
Yeah, there's a lag. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I'll speak if that's okay, John. Then I'll let you go, and I'll say when I'm done. What I was going to say is, ultimately, for me, what I really need to, and it's one of those you need to reassess things. You know what I mean? We all remember when we were in our prime. Like maybe in high school, I dated that person, or I could do this, or I could do that. Okay, I'm only 35. I'm not necessarily out of my prime, but when I set my PR there, it was 5 years ago. And that being said, as well as I have a clear progression where I got faster, and then over the next 3 marathons, I got slower. So if I'm comparing this and saying I'm 16 seconds off, I didn't go sub 4, I didn't blah blah. I'm fill in the blank on all the things that I really thought I was hoping for, but really, if I just take this marathon compared to my last marathon, I'm an hour and a half faster. I mean, I can't be too upset for missing the goal or all the goals when you put it in perspective that way. I mean, I knocked an hour and a half off from my last time. That's pretty good right there.
Yeah.
I mean, I love hearing you say that, and I so wish that I could think that way. I mean, again, I don't post a lot on the Facebook page, but people have probably gleaned I'm pretty competitive with myself, and I struggle to do that. If I have a goal and that's what I want to reach, I'm really hard on myself about not getting there. And I can have all of the good reasons in the world, and I just hate it. I hate not doing it. And it's a catch-22, because if you're going to put a goal out there that is a stretch, you automatically increase the risk of failing, and I wouldn't want to be somebody that didn't go for it because I was scared of failing, but I hate it. I hate not reaching those goals. And with the Leadville thing, people said to me, oh, it's amazing you ran 50 miles at altitude and that's incredible. And I'm like, yep, but I wanted 100. It's like,
you're thinking I made half my goal, and I'm sitting here thinking you went twice as far as I could in much harder conditions.
Yeah. And, and it was at the point where, like, I finished it, and the minute I stopped and got back to the hotel, I felt fine. Like, I was up at 3 a.m. looking for another 100-mile race I could do within the next 2 weeks, because I'm like, I'm ready to run this thing, and my issue was altitude. So, yeah, I find it really hard. And I love hearing you say that, Rob, because everything you're saying is absolutely true, and I just so wish I could get in that mindset. Because I look at everything I've been through in the last 7 months, and I was really struggling with not being able, I think because it was so tantalizingly close for me to maybe get under 4 hours again at Pittsburgh, with all the justification I had for being slower, I still hate it. I know it's how it is, but I hate it. Yeah.
Well, that's going to keep you moving for the next one too. I'll throw something at you. The one that I attempted up there in Vermont.
Yeah.
No woman's ever completed it.
I know.
Just throwing it out there.
When is Megan going to complete it though? Isn't it?
It's June. It's coming up. It's June. Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping she does it. I really do. I think she can.
and this is the thing, John, that's why I say I've done some crazy things, in my time. I've kind of climbed some really tall mountains, and I've done really, big stuff. And the risk of not doing it is huge because it's big. And the risk of putting out there, Rob, that you would love to run a 3:45 marathon, you instantly up the risk that you won't be able to do it because it's a freaking big goal, and you wouldn't want to not have the goal just because there's a risk of not achieving it.
Well, what I've found just recently actually is that I was always setting these goals for myself and really was not basing it on anything realistic.
Yeah.
I was just like, I want to run, a sub 6 half Ironman. I want to do this. I want to do this, but it wasn't really based on anything. It's just what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
What I've started doing, starting back at Runner's World, is that I've kind of reset myself and said, I'm going to try to be as realistic as I can. I know that I can do this. So I'll go a little bit faster than that and see if I can push myself a little bit and get it. And ever since I've done that, I've met every goal.
Yeah.
But it was years I was missing every goal, and not by a little bit, by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, even the closest I got was the Disney Marathon, the first marathon I ran. And my goal was 7 hours. And I think I finished in 7 hours and 21 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's, and I wasn't doing a run walk then. I was just running until I couldn't run anymore and then just walked for a while. I had no idea how close I was.
Yeah.
And
that's why I was good.
Yeah. When Rob said at the beginning, how did I come to the conclusion that I would do this race and pace Lloyd? That's exactly what you're talking about, John. Like, I have to be realistic now, so I had done that 30K and I just knew my pace wasn't there. So I couldn't just have this idea in my head, if somehow there would be magic on race day, and I would suddenly be able to do this thing just because I did it a year ago. I mean, it just wasn't going to happen. So, it's kind of wanting stretch goals, but there's got to be an element of realism there. And I think that's what makes it so tough to see your experience, Rob, because I think it was realistic. It was a huge stretch, but it was like out there. You had put the work in. And I think that makes it even harder.
And that's something I know we're going like at an hour and a half. And that's what I was going to talk to Rob about, is that I wanted to know more is like, do you think, now we used basically the Hansen method for his training this time. And he was so close to that. I'm almost wondering that if maybe it was almost too much, maybe near the end, maybe we should have backed off a little more, but we were following that plan right to the end.
And I also wonder, Rob, I wonder what would happen if you had started out pacing yourself for like a 3:55.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't know. Like I say, hindsight's 20/20. Who the hell knows? But it just would be interesting. I think it's useful to think of it like that, because then you could think of how your strategy could be different the next time.
Well,
the shortest. The shortest thing that I could say is, and this is going to sound funny, but it'll make a little bit of sense. I hope I have a tough summer, and it'll make the next one, which is Chicago, easy. Chicago is notorious, everyone says, hot, but it's flat. So I don't have to contend with the hills in Chicago. But whereas, I was out there on negative. Let's just go with the 0-degree training runs. This run was 54 degrees. That's a 54-degree variance from training to actually completing the race.
Yeah.
But if I'm training for, once again, if I go out in the heat of the day when it's 85, 90 degrees here, and if it's 50 in Chicago or 55 or 60, it'll still be cooler, which I run better and colder. So the weather even should be on my side to go into Chicago. And that being said, it should be flat. So I should be training hopefully hotter and hillier. So like I said, I felt fantastic the early miles of this race. It's just I think I do need to work potentially on my I don't want to say nutrition when I say fueling, making sure that I know how much maybe really like do a legitimate sweat test, see how much I know I'm sweating in the peak to make sure that I'm replenishing enough, and can I actually take that in without getting the sloshing. There's going to be some mad scientist experiment going on to figure that out, because it wasn't a fueling food issue. My heart rate was under control. I wasn't bonking as far as that goes, but I felt like tight and compressed and couldn't do I could not physically move any faster. And it had to be a little bit of dehydration going on because of the humidity.
But what I was going to say, Rob, before is that, but when it comes down to it, that sub 4 was your porta-john break. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really.
Maybe.
I mean, and it sounds weird to say it like that, but you were what 2 minutes over. You had to have taken over 2 minutes in that porta-john,
yep.
right? All right, there you go. So you were
at least a minute, but also too, at least let's just say if it was a minute, but had I not stopped my watch and had I had that accurate, knowing my watch was accurate as well, I could have picked that pace up that last 3 miles as well. There's a bunch of variables that go into it that I know next time, like I'll know not to make that mistake. So.
And maybe too, Rob, that's what I was sort of getting at, like, when did you know? Because if you had known, say, at mile 20 that you were dropping behind, you've then got 6 miles, to gain a bit of time. It's really hard in a marathon in the final 3 miles to make up even 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, who are we kidding here? Like, that's
to make up, you're right. That's.
Yeah, like you've got to be that much more ahead of it. You've got to know at mile 18 or 19 how close you are and have you lost that margin, because then you can just pick up the pace by like 10 seconds a mile or something, which is not that bad.
Yeah. So I should have followed my instinct and called him.
You should have. Yeah. Called him while he was in the porta-potty at least.
Yeah. What are you doing?
And you could have called Lloyd at the same time and said, "Hey,
your
slow
way off
down."
course.
Yeah.
It shows you in the field somewhere. What are you doing, man?
And again, I say these things not as a negative or to kind of beat people up for not noticing, but I feel like I think it probably was the weather and the temperature swing, because, we were all dealing with that on the day. It's been so cold. And then all of a sudden, it's in the 50s. But I think that is kind of selling yourself short, because then you've got no real strategy for what to do about it. So, I would much rather look at the things that I might be able to impact than the things that I couldn't do anything about.
Well, I mean, you guys up north have had it hard like this year. I don't know how I told you, I said on the show last week that I talked to that team from Michigan at St. A's, and they had not even been on their bikes outside yet.
Yeah, and
they were there for a triathlon.
Yeah, and that's why I sort of gave the Leadville example, because if you train, it's like we said before, try and train as close to race conditions as you can, and we just didn't get to do that this year, and I definitely didn't get to train for altitude. But what you can do is get your fitness level that much stronger than you actually need for the race, so that if you get that adverse race day, you've kind of got the fitness to get you through. At least that's what I'm going to try and do next time. I don't know if it'll...
Right, and I think that's why Rob's going to have a good Chicago.
Exactly.
And I think I said that to you right after the race. Then Rob, you got another one. There's another one coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No biggie.
Yeah, try again in 5 months.
You got another one. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's honestly to get through my stuff, with the health issues I've had. That's really how I have to look at it too. Well, there's another one. Next one's coming.
And I guess the thing I'm really trying to sort of get my head around too, like, John, you don't have to like it to accept it, and figure out how to deal with it. I'm never going to like it. So, you just kind of work around it.
Right. And I don't think anyone should like it. I'd wonder, I don't know how to say this the right way, but I'd wonder with their true need to do things, if they're willing to accept bad races, as I'm saying it right, but hopefully you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
is that you don't want? It's okay, it's okay to have a bad race, but you shouldn't become comfortable with it.
Right.
That you always should want to do better. But I sit here down here with these Disney races, and people, they're basically running from photo op to photo op because of all the characters everywhere. You never run those races. If you never run those races, that's what they're like. That's what drives the real runners crazy in those races, is that these people are all over the place.
And everyone has got the right to have their own.
I hate to correct you, when you sit. Sorry for jumping in with the delay, John. You don't want to. I don't want you to diminish anyone or alienate anybody by saying real runners. You mean the people that are there to be versus the people that are there to enjoy the event.
Right. You know what I mean. By real runners, I mean people who are trying to BQ and trying to, they're racing. They're
it's
not...
like I said to Lloyd too, though. If you do a race like Disney, you've got to take the race for what it is.
Exactly.
If you want to BQ, don't go do Disney.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I've said that to people before. It's like, well, it's Disney. What did you expect?
Yeah.
Have you never run this race before? You're going to have that issue. You're going to have the going through Animal Kingdom where it gets, you can barely get 3 people through it. It's going to happen. The parking lot that happens at Disney's castle or Cinderella's castle because everybody wants to go through there to get their picture taken.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped. You have to stop and wait.
I mean,
through that thing.
Rob was talking about the hat that Lloyd had on at Heiner, and they do a 25K and a 50K. And the 25K, they have 1,000 people in that race, which doesn't sound like a lot, but there's like this single track trail that you hit right at the beginning. Yeah, so if you do that race, know that you're going to be standing there, waiting for 1,000 people to get through the single track, and that's just the race,
Yeah, and and I'd said back in the race we have down here, Kroomzoom, we have a lot of single trail as well, and I think the big difference, I beat almost an hour and a half this year, faster than last year. The big difference was I didn't stop and get out of people's way this time. Because I felt so bad that I was slowing people up that I would stop and get off the trail and let them pass. And this time I was like, I'd get over as far as I could, but I didn't stop.
No, I don't blame you.
And I think that was the big difference. One of the big differences, not the big difference. But.
And we're kind of getting off track a little bit here, but that's one of my gripes about trail runners. They tend to have this idea of if they tell you they want to pass on your left, you should somehow constantly get out the way so that they can. I'm like,
right.
no.
Go around me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good on you, John.
Yeah. Well, depends on my mood at that day. If I'm having a good race, go around me. I'm not that big. You can get around me still. All right, guys. This is going to be a long show.
Yeah,
you there?
We're almost 140 before intro and outro.
Yeah. All right, so Karen, we appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
Yeah, I mean, my next race is the end of June. I think it's the 23rd of June. It's on a local trail here, and it's like a super hilly, awesome trail run. So I am glad to get off the road. I'm glad to be done with road marathons for a while.
So that's your next one. My next one is June 30th, the 14-mile Moon over Kroom trail race.
It must actually be the weekend after mine, so they're pretty.
Yeah, it's the weekend after yours, and then Rob's is the same weekend, right? The 23rd. That's when's Damn Try, right? Yeah, it's that 23rd as well, right? Yeah, so we all got races coming up in about 55 days or so.
Nice.
50 days or so. So
I haven't touched handlebars or water in 4 months, so it's going to be fun.
I think what we need to do is get Karen on the next time we have Vinny on.
Oh, that would be so fun. I love his sense of humor, and he's so harmless. It's like he's just funny.
He is. Yeah. I mean, he's not, like I said, he's not everyone's taste, but I think he's hilarious. But
yeah.
But we grew up at the same time, so it's like we have all the same references in our head.
Yeah, we're all old, unlike Rob.
Unlike Rob.
Getting older day by day.
Yeah, he says his age, and I was like, oh my God, I'm 20 years older than he is.
I'm like, man, I would love to be in my 30s doing this.
My God. I know. Oh, well. So, Rob, you got anything more to add?
I got nothing for right now.
You got nothing, man. We're going to talk more about this. So, once again, thanks to Karen and Rob. And, well, Rob, you're here every week, so we don't have to thank you anymore. So everybody, if you get a chance, go to the Facebook group and just look at teamE4E on any of the social media sites and you'll find us. We were the podcast of the week last week on Podbean, so that helped us out a little bit. And write us a review. We still haven't got a lot of reviews, so get out there and write us a review if you can on Podbean or iTunes, and it helps the show out. So if that's it, then we will talk to you all next week.
Thanks for listening to the Endurance for Everyone podcast. If you have comments or questions for the show, send an email to teamE4E@enduranceforeveryone.com. And remember, swim calm, bike strong, and run steady.